Okay, gang, here we are at the third part of the UBD model. That's the learning plan, not the lesson plan, which is the whole kit and caboodle. The learning plan is the outline of the actual classroom teaching. Now, once upon a time, this is where lesson planning began, and perhaps it worked once upon a time, but no longer. Witness the decline in U.S. performance internationally, both in literacy and numeracy. As the UBD model indicates, crafting the actual lesson comes after we know what we want to achieve, that is, our desired results, and how we will know we've achieved those results, that is, the assessment. Now, let me qualify a second using the writing process as a metaphor. We talk about the steps of the writing process: pre-writing, organizing, drafting, revising, editing, and publishing. Now, we might teach these in a linear fashion, but in reality, the process is, as we tell our students, and we know from our own experience as writers, recursive. We move back and forth between the steps. So when I am revising, I might realize I need to reorganize. Or when I am drafting, I might suddenly realize I need more data collection, so I'm going back to pre-writing. So too in lesson planning. You might have an idea for a way to teach something, but if your cool idea doesn't teach any of the skills you and your school or district believe students should know, understand, and be able to do, then that lesson is what I call Poe with a flashlight. Ask me and I'll explain what that means. As you begin to craft lessons, and I do mean craft them, it is an acquired art. Think not only about the skills you want to teach and the tasks you will use to assess mastery, but the language associated with English language arts. For example, if your assignment asks students to infer something and they have no idea what is an inference, then you will end up with neither knowledge nor understanding, and not a single inference. The same goes with context. We'll read later in the semester an essay that hinges on knowing what is a squat toilet. If one does not know what is a squat toilet, the essay loses meaning. Therefore, you may find yourself in the middle of your learning plan teaching subjects that extend beyond the borders of English language arts. I happen to like that aspect of our discipline, the fact that it is interdisciplinary by its very nature. Here's the Wiggins and McTighe Stage 3 template for a learning plan. Their learning plan identifies what learning experiences and instruction will enable students to achieve the desired results you've identified. And instruction is designed to teach to the assessments you have developed. Let's look ever so briefly at what the UBD folks identify as the elements of their learning plan. Yippee, another mnemonic! We have where to. It's pretty basic, however, it's not what you will be doing. It's not that there's anything wrong with it. All of these elements are part and parcel of good teaching. However, it's not a model for actually structuring instruction. And that structure is vital. Indeed, just yesterday or the day before, whatever, Stacy and I were talking about the book Teach Like a Champion, and she's going to use that in EED 308. And Doug Lemov, the writer, says this exact same thing about structure. Still, let's look at what Wiggins and McTighe have here. First place, they say that students do better with a map, so teachers must help them see where a lesson or a unit is going and what is expected of them. In addition, teachers need to know from where a student starts, that is, his or her prior knowledge. Cool, all fine. A hook is also an element of the plan we'll be using. It's a way to engage students at the top of a lesson. Again, perfectly cool. Equipping students means providing them with the instruction they need to engage the tasks you develop. When I say to you, and I will say it, teach something, damn it, this is what I mean. As I've already said, learning is about reflection, and out of reflection comes rethinking and revision. The portfolio approach that I will share with you and advocate endlessly places revision at the heart of learning and assessment. And evaluation is key to reflection. When students reflect on their work, they are necessarily evaluating what worked well and what worked less well, instead of badly. It will become clear to you very quickly, if it hasn't already, that I believe that all we do in the classroom must be tailored to the needs, interests, and abilities of students. There is a difference between tailoring to interests, which means connecting learning to the lives and interests of students, and tailoring to ability, which is where our discussions of differentiation and modification fit. But unlike where to, our mini lesson format is all about structure and organization. As I say, although the elements in this where to model are spot on, I like to be more of a dictator, a benign dictator. I think structured instruction is in order, so we will be using the mini lesson format, and you will begin to see mini lessons in your sleep. Every moment in your life will become a potential mini lesson. There are any number of formats and procedures for what Nancy Atwell termed mini lessons, which are teacher-guided, collaborative activities designed to move students towards independent practice of new learning. We call them mini because the direct instruction portion of the lesson should last for about 7, 10, maybe 12 minutes. So in a 90-minute class, there might be multiple moments of direct instruction. But let's start small with the basic outline. The format here is pretty standard, and I require that you stick with it as long as you are in methods, and I hope that you stick with it as long as you teach. Someday, when you've mastered teaching, you might mess with it a bit, but the theory behind it, explain, model, or guide the students by practicing as a whole class, practice learning in small groups, practice independently, each student on his or her own, these are the steps that should define your pedagogy. So here are the required components. Context or a hook that makes student interested in the new material or ensures that they have the necessary prior knowledge to continue learning. Then comes a brief instructional piece, think 7 to 12 minutes. You should, either during instruction or immediately after, model new learning. And then you model if you haven't. A verbal check for understanding is when you ask to ensure that students are getting it, and you look them in the eyes. Think open-ended questions. For example, okay, somebody summarize what we just learned, or some other short answer type query. But if you ask, hey, is everybody following? They're all going to say yes. Then comes guided practice, in which the whole group completes the new skill with you leading them through it. After that comes whole class discussion of the skill or strategy. This serves as another verbal check for understanding. Unless the whole class discussion has made it clear that everybody's getting it, then you can sort of move away from that check for understanding. Next comes small group practice. This is an opportunity for students to practice in a safe environment with their peers, and it's also an opportunity for formative assessment. Then you want those small groups to report back to the whole class. This is your final check for understanding. Here's where you determine if you need any remediation or if you need to reteach or review. Only then, only after students have heard you teach it, seen you model it, talked about it as a whole class, done it in a small group, only then do you ask them for independent practice. That's an opportunity for formal and perhaps summative assessment. You must learn these steps. It should take you 5 minutes to learn these steps. Learning to implement them, that's a longer road to hoe. However, my aim is this, that by the time you complete your program, you can plan on the fly. That is, you can be driving to school and hear something cool on the radio, Mike and Mike, NPR, I don't care what it is you're listening to, and you think, that would be so cool to teach. And by the time you pull into the lot, you've roughed out a lesson in your head that not only follows this structure, but also allows you to meet some of the standards you are required to teach, to envision an assessment, and then offer it to your students that same day. Let's talk about one of the biggest challenges you will face as a teacher, the need to differentiate and modify instruction. As more and more students are sheltered or mainstreamed into the general education classroom, and as RTI becomes the latest classroom challenge for teachers, Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction fall to you. You are the general education teacher. As a result, the lesson plan format you will use requires that you identify specifically how you will differentiate or modify instruction to meet the diversity of students in your classroom. Asking you to note these differentiations and modifications alongside your plan for instruction ensures that such elements are not simply add-ons, things that you come up with after the fact. Rather, thinking about these important aspects of instruction are integrated into lesson design. Now that said, in the lessons you will develop for our class, differentiation and modification are, in effect, conjecture. They are things one could do. In a lesson plan developed for your actual classroom, you as teacher would know the composition of your classroom, the students for whom modified or differentiation instruction is necessary, and the kinds of learning challenges or particular needs they bring to the classroom. So we have to fudge that a little bit when we're doing lessons in methods. We'll discuss in class how we'll try to practice this element a bit more authentically. But let's think about one or two common examples. Remember, one aim of formative assessment is to help you see who is and who isn't quite following your lesson. As you become more and more proficient, you'll be able to adapt your instruction on the fly. That said, by planning to meet the needs of the students in your class, you can be a bit proleptic, prepared to support them as they are learning, not as a remedy if they are not. Some easy and very doable ways include considering alternate texts that provide learning in a different format or at a different discourse level. What about a differentiated assignment? You are testing mastery using a different type of assessment. Consider what kinds of supports you can offer. Group work, well crafted, can allow you time to work independently with struggling learners. We'll look at these and other options during the semester. We're also really fortunate that usually in Method we have one or two SPED students, and they have some terrific ideas for differentiation and modification, as will your instructors in EDSE, because that's the class where really this hits home. And the last thing we're going to talk about in terms of your lesson plan is the header. Real simple. Your name, the unit title, the lesson title, and I am a huge fan of creative, engaging unit titles, the same way I am with paper titles. What's the grade in the course, the time frame, how much time do you have to teach, and always, always, always cram it in. Not cram it in. My point is I want you to recognize that you think you can do something in 60 minutes, when in reality it will take you 2 hours. So whatever that proportion is, figure it out. That's math, and I don't do math. What are the materials you need to have for that lesson? What do you need to bring with you? I am notorious for forgetting to bring something to a classroom, which is great if I'm in the room near my office, but I never am, so I have to either haul ass back or try and teach on the fly. Identify what's prior content knowledge students need in order to complete that day's lesson. You can't get it all, but it's this idea of keeping a kind of flow or transition. What they learned the last time that they're going to be applying now? What knowledge must they have to do this lesson? If you've got a lesson on writing a thesis statement and you haven't talked about a thesis statement previously, well, you're going to have to teach it then. So you've got to make sure it's been taught previously. And then the new content knowledge, what are the big ideas coming out of that lesson that you're going to be doing on that particular day? We'll talk more about the header. We'll talk about the lesson plan format again, nonstop throughout the next 15 weeks together. But I want you to begin to familiarize yourself with it and remember the advice way at the beginning that I gave you from my former student, Matt Seymour. Print that chapter, keep it with you. I've posted for you both a blank lesson plan and a lesson plan with the sort of instructions in each field. Use those as you begin to familiarize yourself with this methodology. And remember, we're looking for you to progress over the course of the semester. It will not come easily in the beginning. It might not even come easily at the end, but eventually you'll have the same passion for lesson planning that I think a lot of your peers do, and I know I have. So, you're done. Move on. Go read something else.